Hello! Welcome to Swords and Statutes. My name is Zach Brown. I am a third-year law student, and I'm going to be talking to you today and in the future about Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop role-playing through the lens of the legal system and just the law in general, taking Dungeons & Dragons, myth, lore, and game mechanics and comparing that to legal principles and trying to possibly, hopefully, teach you something about the law as we talk about D&D. So, hopefully, we can all learn something through this process. But today, we are going to create a character, just one that I was going to make anyway, something for a campaign that I have coming up. And we're just going to talk through that. I'm going to show you how to make a character and how this certain character can exemplify some certain crimes and torts. So let's see. All right, so today we're going to be making a lizard folk barbarian. Ooh. And it's going to have the entertainer background. So if you don't know what a class or a lizard folk is, that's okay. We'll talk about that. So, in D&D you have to choose a class, a race, and a background for your character. Three things that sort of help define who you are in the game. So your race, which in this case, a lizard folk, which is basically like a big scaly lizard man, that's something that gives you inherent abilities that helps you do things better in the game. For instance, a lizard folk, they have better constitution than, say, a human, whereas a gnome may have better intelligence or something like that. So again, the race gives you inherent abilities that help you better act in the game. Your class, as a second thing, is sort of your role within your adventuring party or the world. So today we're going to be doing a barbarian, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like, a sort of barbarous creature or a person who will attack in rage and sort of beat up people as they see fit. However, this is quite different than a wizard or person who uses magic. So again, your class gives you what sort of role you will fill in the world, whereas your race gives you inherent abilities. Lastly, the third thing, your background, sort of helps you build a story for your character. It's something that can sort of bake in story hooks for you to give to your dungeon master. So for instance, in this case of our lizard folk barbarian who was once an entertainer, there's an option to make your entertainer a gladiator. So that's what we're going to do here, and sort of we'll say that this lizard folk was a trained fighter, and because of that he became a super strong barbarian. But again, there are multiple different backgrounds, and you can make your own background too. Okay, so that's our three basic things, our race, class, and background. So before we get into actually building the character, we need to roll some dice. And the first dice you will roll for your character are for your ability scores. Now, what are ability scores? They are something that sort of shape your character in a numerical, mechanical way. They sort of give the life to your character, at least through the math of the game. So, to roll for our ability scores, we're going to roll 4 six-sided dice, and what we'll do, we'll roll all of those and then drop the lowest number. So for instance, if I rolled a 1, a 5, a 3, and a 2, I would get rid of the 1 and be left with the 2, the 3, and the 5, and add those all together, and I get a total of 10. All right, so I will do that, and then we'll add those in to our character sheet. Okay, so here we are in our character sheet, and I have rolled for my ability scores. And My friend Evan just told me nice. And it is quite nice because our character's name, as you can see here, is Hodgepodge. So, I think that's a pretty good name. That sounds like something a lizard man would say. So, as we talked about, we have a Barbarian. And we're just going to do level 1 right here just to make this super simple. And we have an entertainer background and a lizard folk. Lizard folk, so what is alignment? Alignment is sort of where your character falls on a spectrum between good and evil and law and chaos. So this being a law-focused podcast and video series, you would think that I would make all my characters law-focused. However, that is absolutely not the case. Sure, playing a lawful character is quite fun, especially lawful evil. Those are some of my favorite characters to play. But lizard folk usually run neutral, especially true neutral, where they don't really take a stance on either of those sort of lines of either law or chaos or good or evil. So we'll just say neutral there. So I talked about ability scores. What do those tie to? I know that there's a lot on screen here, but right now we're just going to be focusing on these 6 or so boxes, these strength, dexterity, and so on. Now I mentioned that I rolled 4 6-sided dice 6 times and then took the lowest of those. So what I'm going to do now is add those values into these large boxes. I think you can also put them in these smaller boxes. It's really just personal preference. And I'll talk about what this smaller box is once we get all of our numbers in here. And as you can see, each of these numbers, strength, dexterity, constitution, they sort of flow throughout the rest of your character sheet into your skills and your saving throws, which we will address here in a second. So I rolled pretty well for this character. Pretty happy about that. So for a barbarian, we want a very strong barbarian. So we're going to give our highest, which was a 17 out of a possible 18 total, or a highest number of 18. We're going to give that to strength because we need a really strong character here. We also want our barbarian to be very sort of hardy, so to speak, to where they're not going to be able to, where they are going to be able to take a lot of damage and sort of stay standing. And that's what Constitution does for you. That plays into how big of a hit you can take. So I'm going to put our 15 there. Now, this Constitution may not be as strong as the U.S. Constitution, but it does not have a Commerce Clause. So, I don't know. Take it or leave it there. Which one's better? All right. So, the next highest I had was a 14. And, I mean, lizard men are pretty fast. So, we're going to drop that here. Dexterity is, again, sort of how quick you can move, how fast you can jump over things and get out of danger. And now we move into sort of 3 things that our lizard folk barbarian, even though he's an entertainer, will not be well suited at. So our next highest was 13, and we're going to put that in charisma because, again, this guy, Hodgepodge, was a entertainer, so he's pretty charismatic when he was out on the gladiatorial fields doing his thing. He was making some people laugh, I guess. However, for my last 2 rolls, I got 10s on both of them. So he can kind of read and talk and whatnot, but in terms of wisdom, he's not the wisest, but can at least think ahead a little bit. Okay. So we've got our 6 ability scores in, but we still have this big box waiting here. And that ties to our ability modifier. Now, we're going to be getting into more numbers as we add here, but it's okay, just stay with me. So each of these numbers, the 15, the 10s, they all correspond to a ability modifier which goes up from 10. So at a 10 ability score, you have a 0 ability score modifier. Okay? However, once you get up to 12 to 13, it's a +1. Similarly, in the 14 and 15 range, it is +2. And finally, at 17, it is +3. So as you can see, as the numbers get higher, the ability score modifier gets higher. So the higher your ability score, the higher your modifier, which does not always correspond to the amount of consequential damages that you may experience, because your harm could be not quite big, but your consequential damages could extend way beyond what you ever imagined. All right, so as we're going to kind of move across the page, we're going to hit a couple of things here. Proficiency bonus is something that is tied in to your character's level. So we're doing a level 1 Barbarian, and at level 1, all characters have a +2 to your proficiency bonus. So what is proficiency? Well, that means that you are proficient with something. You might be really good at handling animals, or being adept with the arcane magics. But it's something where you can quickly and easily sort of see that your character is proficient. We're going to work down next to our saving throws. So ordinarily, a character is going to take their ability score modifier and transpose that onto their saving throw. So for instance, a character that is not proficient in strength is just going to have a +3 saving throw. However, because we are making a barbarian, barbarians are proficient in strength. So we can click that little mark to give us a visual indicator and add our 3 and 2 to get up to 5. All right, so as you can see, I have gone and added all of my saving throws in here. And again, so barbarians are proficient, again, adding our proficiency bonus in both constitution and strength. So you can see how those tie. The next thing we're going to use our ability scores for are these skills. Skills are something that your character are skilled in. It was a hard line of logic to follow there. However, skills make up a large portion of gameplay, especially during the exploration phase of D&D, where you might be trying to find who a murderer was, or trying to suss out where tracks might be in a wooded area. Or they might be something you use when you're trying to actually figure out which rule of evidence you need to use. That would be either a perception or an insight, or in some ways, a deception check. Anyway, as you can see, every skill is tied to an ability score, so like athletics is tied to strength. So, similarly to saving throws, our ability score modifier is going to drop into all of these, or it is going to drop into each skill that it is connected to. So for instance, sadly, our hodgepodge lizardfolk barbarian has a 0 modifier in history because he has a 0 modifier in intelligence. So what is this used for? When you do an intelligence check, when your dungeon master asks you to figure out what the history of something is, you would roll a 20-sided dice, And sadly, in this case, you would add 0, add nothing else to it. You would just roll the 20-sided dice. However, if this was, for instance, a plus 3, you would roll the 20-sided dice and then add the 3 on top of it. So that's how a skill is used in gameplay and how they sort of are derived. However, your race and your background give you options and sort of inherent skills that you can sort of be proficient at. So, for instance, lizard folk gain proficiency in 2 of the possible 4 of animal handling, nature, perception, or stealth or survival. So I can choose 2 of these, and I think because Hodgepodge is he's a guy who really knows how to survive, we're going to give him a +2 in survival there, because this is a wisdom modifier. He's just going to have +2, and that's coming from his, again, proficiency bonus. So, again, we have a choice of 2 from those skills, and I think rather than going with something that is always useful, such as perception, I'm going to go with something a bit different, such as animal handling. Because, I mean, he's a lizard. He should know how to handle other lizards, right? I mean, it makes sense. He could probably figure out which dog has already had its 1 bite. Also, you get proficiencies from your background, as I mentioned. So, for instance, with the entertainer background, you get skill proficiencies in acrobatics and also performance, which makes sense. I mean, a performer is going to be able to fly around, especially a gladiator such as Hodgepodge. So, for instance, acrobatics, we have +2, +2 to give us a total of 4 here. All right, so I will add those in and we'll jump back. And gosh, I gotta plug in my battery. So I have added in all of my skills here. I also grabbed the ones that the Barbarian class gave me. So I have a pretty good spread of skill proficiencies. Not the best, but that's not really what Barbarians are known for. They're really just there to hit things and be a really good sort of shield for the rest of the party. One other small thing is this passive wisdom score. Passive wisdom is sort of the situational awareness that your character has about the world around him or her. You can sort of think of it as if someone's coming up behind you with a bat and they're going to hit you. If your passive wisdom score is high enough, you will be able to turn around and see them. So if we compare this to a tort case, if you have a low passive wisdom score, you will not see the person coming up and hitting you with a bat. Thus, you'll only be able to charge them with battery. However, if you have a high passive wisdom, you will be able to turn around, see them, and then probably get hit. However, you'll be able to claim both assault and battery because you were witness to and felt the fear of being harmed by your assailant. So, passive wisdom can really change your claim. All right, so now we have all of our ability scores and skills and saving throws all set. The next thing we're going to talk about is equipment, which is down here, but it plays in to things further up on the page. So your class gives you proficiencies in different equipment, such as armor or weapons. So for instance, the Barbarian is proficient in light armor, medium armor, shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons, but is not proficient in any tools. However, your background or your race, or both, may give you tool proficiencies, or may also change your proficiencies in weapons or armor. So every class has some starting equipment as well. So you may be able to choose between certain items to start out with, like a great axe or any martial weapon, or like a maul or something like that. So they're really just choices to help you sort of figure out what your character looks like in the world. Arguably, the most important of these is your armor. And the thing that makes barbarians and lizardfolk really interesting is that they have the option to not wear armor and then have sort of inherent abilities that give them protection. So whereas armor has set numeric value to it, which can be found in the Player's Handbook or on D&D Beyond. For instance, a medium armor hide shirt, I guess. I don't know what a hide piece of armor would necessarily look like. But anyway, a hide armor costs 10 gold pieces and gives you 12 armor class, plus your dexterity modifier. Okay, well, you are now probably asking, well, Zach, what's armor class? Well, armor class goes right here. That is how much, there's how hard of a hit you can take, to sort of put it simply there. It's something where if you have a high armor class, you can take a bigger hit based on a character's attack roll. However, this is not a attack roll or combat video, but it's something where with any attack you're going to have to do a attack roll, which is a 20-sided dice plus whatever applicable modifiers. But if that number is less than your armor class, it does not hit. So for instance, if we had an armor class of 10 and the attack roll was a 9, that attack would miss. So for instance, or in this instance, because we have a lizard folk, we have the option, and this is what we're going to do, of taking their natural armor ability, which says that when the character is not wearing armor, they get an AC of 13 plus the dexterity modifier, which is 2. So giving us a total of 15. However, it's something too where any shield is also added to this armor class. So Hodgepodge will totally be using a shield here, because that will give him an armor class of 17 at level 1, which is really great. And again, all of these values for armor class can be found in Chapter 5 of the Player's Handbook. And just to sort of keep track of the fact that Hodgepodge is wearing a shield, we can come down here and put shield, and that is, again, +2 to your armor class. And again, just while we're wrapping up equipment here, you can again put whatever sort of weapons you have, so like a maul or a battle axe, as well as any sort of equipment, such as a 10-foot pole, into your inventory, along with whatever sort of monies that you may have acquired. Next, we're going to look at this box right here, Initiative. Initiative is something that you will roll every time you start combat to then set the order of what combat is. You sort of think of it in a sense of priority related to secure transactions. Whoever has whoever attaches and then files and lets the world know, or excuse me, whoever perfects their interest has priority there and can let people know that they are the first in line to that interest. It's also similar to the intestate succession rules. Like if you're married, your spouse is going to get things first. But if you don't have kids and you're unmarried or your spouse is dead, then things flow down that way. Initiative is just the same. Everyone rolls, and you sort of see what those numbers are and then go in that order. So, how do you get initiative? Well, it's simple. It is just your dexterity modifier. So you would roll a 20-sided dice and then add your initiative there. Speed. What is speed? Well, that comes from your race. It's something that is static for the most part. You can change it based on some spells, but speed for lizard folk is 30 feet in a turn. They also have a swimming speed of 30 feet, but rarely will you be swimming, and that would be something you would just grab your book and look it up. But you can move 30 feet in your turn as a lizard folk. All right, so buckle in. We're going to be doing a little bit of math here, talking about hit points. So hit points are derived from your class. So to get your hit points at first level, it is something that your class page just straight out says. The Barbarian page says it is 12 plus the Constitution modifier. So our hit point maximum is 12 plus 2, which is our Constitution modifier, for a total of 14 at level 1. However, there are rules on the Barbarian page about hit points at higher levels, and how you do that is you roll a 12-sided dice and then add your Constitution modifier. Alternatively, you could take the average of that 12-sided dice, which is a 7 rounding up, and then add that to this 14 number. So, for instance, if at second level I don't want to roll the dice, I just want to take the average, I would add 7 and then my Constitution modifier to get a total of 23 for second level. But at this point, we're still first level. We have 14 hit points. Temporary hit points are something that you can get based on spells, and they sort of give you extra life and invigorate you for the time being. What are hit dice? Hit dice are something that you can use to replenish your health during a short rest, and you gain them back during a long rest. But really, they're just a way to kind of boost your ability to keep going. It's like a cup of coffee when you're studying for exams in law school, because everything's bleak, and it's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna take a cup of coffee and roll my hit dice and hope it's high. However, you get 1 hit dice per level. So, and each class has a different hit dice. Some of them are the same. For instance, lower Constitution classes, such as the Wizard, have a lower hit dice. But for a Barbarian, it's a pretty big one. It is 1d12. So, when a Barbarian needs to sort of replenish health, roll a 12-sided dice and be ready to go. All right. So the next thing that we'll be doing is working through these personality traits. It's really the last thing. I do want to note here, though, about attacks and spellcasting. all of these items, like the maul or the battle axe, they have values to them. So for instance, they have dice associated with them that you can roll for your damage. So like a Morning Star, or excuse me, a maul, yes. It does 12d6 bludgeoning damage when you hit with it. So let's put a maul in here, and that'll be one of our attacks. So our attack bonus is our strength, which was a 3, plus whatever proficiencies are applicable. So because a maul is a martial weapon, and barbarians are proficient with martial weapons, we can add up to a total of +5 for the attack roll. So when you roll your d20 for your attack, you add 5 to that. So if you roll a 15 on your d20 roll, you add 5 and you get a total of 20, which would then be hitting against. Damage and type, we do what the player's handbook will tell us, which is 2d6, so 2 6-sided dice, plus our strength modifier, so 3. So if we roll 2d6 and get a 4 and a 1, that is a 5 plus 3 for a total of 8 damage for that maul attack. Lizard folk are pretty cool in that they have a bite attack that they can do as well. Bite. And that's something where they are able to do that just by virtue of their own bodies. And you always get proficiency with your unarmed strikes, which is what a bite is for lizard folk. That is 1d6 plus our strength modifier of 3. All right. So our personality traits, our ideals, and our bonds, those mostly will come from your background. And I think that they did a great job in 5th edition giving you tables to roll off of and sort of giving you ideas to where you can kind of roll with that. Say, all right, I'm going to roll on the ideals table and take that. However, it's your character. You can add whatever you want there. So, because lizard folk are sort of cold, calculating, in some ways killers, we're gonna add that to Hodgepodge. He's kind of cold. He enjoys the sun and probably long walks on the beach. He does not enjoy reading, but he also likes a good fight. For his ideals, we'll say that he seeks glory for himself and the folk with a big F. That way we know that it's a type of, that it's his clan. So it possibly may get him some constitutional protection in some ways. Bonds, so who's he really connected to? Or maybe there's someone that he's lost. For Hodgepodge, we'll say, I don't know, maybe he lost someone in the gladiator ring. My friends are the ones who survive. Ooh. So that sort of gives him that kind of cold feeling again, kind of giving him a sort of devil-may-care attitude. And what are his flaws? What is Hodgepodge's main flaw? Well, besides having his tail flop around, it'd probably be that he, I don't know, We'll say that he can be kind of, he can take too long. Or maybe take too long to make life or death decisions. So there we go. He kind of has some issues making decisions in the heat of the moment. So again, looking at these 4 boxes, it gives us a sense of who this character is and how they can work with both the class and the race. Now, in this sort of features and traits area, you can add in your sort of race-specific and class-specific things. So for instance, at the first level, barbarians get rage, and they have 2 uses of that. Rage is something where they can go into the state and they take reduced damage and do more damage. So at first level it is +2. So for instance, with this maul attack, you would do 2d6 +3 +2. So we'll do 2 +2. You get an idea there. Barbarians also have this unarmored defense option as well. However, the lizard folk version is, well, I don't know. So for barbarians, it is 10 plus dexterity modifier plus constitution modifier. So for that, it would be so 10 plus 2 plus 2, so that'd be 14. And then if we add a shield, that's only 16. So doing the lizard folk scales comes out better for us. So then we can add in some of these like lizard folk things too, such as the natural armor, which you've already worked out the math for. We have the bite. Also, lizard folk have this really cool thing where they can bite onto someone and then gain back some health. That's called their Hungry Jaws ability. Really fascinating ability that works, which I was amazed when I read that. I was like, this is possibly overpowered, but I look forward to using it. So yeah. Lastly, we need to kind of look at what proficiencies that are not directly tied into the math of the character we have. So languages are one of these. So everyone can, well, most every character can speak Common, which is in America to be English effectively, but if you go to like France, it may be French, or really what everyone speaks, and everyone can kind of at least follow along. Lizard folk also speak Draconic. There are feats which you can learn more languages though. Also, you can add in some tool proficiencies here. So for instance, an entertainer gets a disguise kit. So we'll add that proficiency here. It'd be really funny to see a lizard folk try to disguise himself though. And a type of instrument, so I don't know, I think it'd be kind of interesting to see a lizard folk play the viola. Be one heck of a day there. So, there's our character, Hodgepodge. He's a hodgepodge of stuff here. He can maul you and bite you. So there is Hodgepodge, our lizard folk barbarian. As we talked about, he's kind of a cool cucumber. He's not going to really let stuff get under his skin, but when needed, he will rage and protect his friends. But how can this be applied to some legal principles? Well, as we talked about with the passive wisdom, there's a difference between assault and battery in the tort sense of things. So let's talk about that real quickly. So both assault and battery are intentional torts, and it's something where an intentional tort includes the intent to do an act that has causation and causes an injury to another person. There's two types of intent. There is specific intent, which is desiring to bring about the injury that the tort is protecting against. And then there's general intent, which is you know to a substantial certainty the injury that a particular tort is protecting against will occur. However, both assault and battery are specific intent. Well, they can be either, but I don't know. A lot of the times they're specific, but they can be general. Those are in some ways more fun cases though. But yes, they can be either type of intent. So what's a battery? A battery is an intentional act of a person that causes a harmful or offensive contact to the person, the body of another. So when you think of this is the most simple kind, is someone just smacking you or hitting you over the head or throwing something at you and hitting you that way. It's it is truly offensive conduct or an offensive contact that is either harmful or offensive contact that causes you bodily harm. So again, if the dude comes up behind you and smacks you with a bat, you have been battered. Ha! However, assault is intentionally causing apprehension of imminent battery. So it's something where it's an intentional act of someone else that is causing reasonable apprehension or essentially fear of imminent, it's going to happen right now, harmful or offensive contact. So if we think about the dude coming up behind you with the bat, if you don't see that dude, you're not being assaulted because you don't have imminent apprehension of the guy behind you. However, as we spoke about, if you have a very high wisdom or a very high passive wisdom, you're going to be able to sort of get a sense and turn around and see the dude, and then, you're going to hit me with a bat. You have the imminent apprehension that you're going to have harmful conduct. So at that point, you have been assaulted. And then if the dude hits you, you got assault and battery. So 2 claims. So if you think about this, how is a barbarian going to really come to form in day-to-day life? Well, you got your office Christmas party, something like that. You got Todd in accounting. Todd, he's had one too many of those holiday drinks. And he thinks it's high time to tell Mark, his boss, that he's had too much work. He can't take it anymore. So Todd from accounting is going to take his stapler and come up behind Mark and is going to try to staple his shirt. That would scare me. So as Todd is coming up behind Mark, if Mark does not sense Todd coming up behind him with the stapler, then Mark cannot claim assault. However, if Mark turns around or hears the clicking of the stapler, then you got a real issue, because Todd has then caused that reasonable apprehension with that clicking. Todd causes the reasonable apprehension of imminent harm. And then once the staple goes into boss man's shirt, we have harmful to his clothes at least and offensive conduct, because how dare Todd from accounting try to staple his boss's shirt? That's just cruel. However, this was all caused because Todd went into a rage and became a true accounting barbarian. So, I leave you with this. Don't be an accounting barbarian. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. Again, my name is Zach Brown, and this is Swords and Statutes. I hope to be bringing you more videos like this, or if you hated this, let me know. I don't know. I can change it. Also, if you would like to support me, you can go and purchase my adventures on DM's Guild. I have 3 of them. I will link them in the comments. They are a trilogy of Knoll-based adventures. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you all next time as we explore more about law in D&D. Hope you learned something today. Have a good one.